how do you figure out what can you learn? What should you implement into your product, or what should you ignore when you get this feedback from early customers?
Just say yes to everything and then make it the CTO's problem.
No, that's that likely thing for a sales guy to say, right? Here's what I'd say, because look, customers come up with all kinds of crazy things, and customers will promise, if you have this feature, if you have that feature, we would buy. The way we worked around that was we didn't build anything unless there was already a financial commitment, not an LOI. Like, you're going to pay, and we'll promise a go live date, but like, you're going to pay for a defined scope.
How do you figure out messaging when you have like lots of different companies that you're selling to, that you can sell to? How did you structure it? Maybe on the Levelset example, how did you figure out like what's the right messaging and what's the right structure to fuel these sales and to make them easier to execute?
Yeah, maybe it's a good time to probably mention like segmentation in that area too.
Yeah, so I don't know that I'm the best person to answer this question, because I don't think we ever really figured it out. I joke about this. We got Levelset to about 30 million not ARR. Total revenue was like 30 million at scale. And I still feel like we didn't have product market fit, which when I say those words out loud, it sounds ridiculous because we very obviously had, we caught a tiger by the tail. We were, at scale, we were closing $1.5 million to $2 million in net new ARR every single month. We had thousands and thousands of 5-star reviews. We had really built a valuable thing. But I still didn't feel like we totally nailed the messaging. And that's because, if I had a sales rep, or if I was a sales rep sitting in the seat and I was working inbound leads in one sitting, in 3 conversations back to back, I could be talking to a pool contractor in Florida, a mid-sized general contractor in Dallas, Texas, and then a lumber supply company in California. Those 3 conversations are totally different. And so we just had to get really good at zeroing in on what's the problem that we solve.
Why did it take you 18 months to go to 1.2 million, you said?
Yeah, I don't know the exact numbers, but we got roughly like 1.5 million or so in about 18 months. And it came in like there were some step function increases in there because we had closed some enterprise deals. Anyway, back to your question.
Yes. So why did it tell you around 18 months to get to this number, and then 6 years to 10 million, and then another 18 months to 20 million? Like, what was the key components of these changes in, mindset or whatever that was?
Yeah. So chapter 1, the chapter 1 was really Scott's chapter of the lean wizard, is what we called it. You could go online, Google how to file a lien in Broward County, Florida. You'd find this website, ZLean. You'd go through this shopping cart experience, and then you would pay $300 for your lien, and you'd move on with your day.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Bricks and Bytes podcast, where we dive into construction and AEC technology. Before we get started though, if you're a startup founder or operator responsible for innovation in your company, or you want a deeper, more insightful look into technology in AEC, you won't want to miss our newsletter. From deep dives into particular technologies such as AI, robotics, design, software, and so on. Hot takes from investors betting big in AEC technology, and advice on building tech companies, including the stories and takeaways of the most successful AEC technology founders. Head over to www.bricks-bytes.com and sign up today to get this exclusive material straight to your inbox. And now for the episode. This episode is brought to you by BuildVision, transforming construction supply chain by bringing contractors, manufacturers, and stakeholders onto a single software platform. Visit buildvision.io to find out more. Are you interested in finding out how companies scale past the $10 million ARR ceiling? This episode is one of the number of episodes forming part of our new go-to-market guide, which reveals how industry leaders scaled past the stubborn $10 million ARR mark using strategies specifically designed for AEC. Discover the proven land and expand blueprint, pricing models at work, and real case studies from companies with significant exits. To get your copy, visit www.bricksbytes.com/GTM. Okay, Martin. Thank you. Martin. We have two Martins, by the way. That is the first for Bricks and Bytes. So congratulations, I guess.
For us.
We've arrived, Martin.
Yeah,
this is our day.
We've arrived.
Cool. So Martin, thanks for joining. We were just chatting beforehand, and we spoke to Scott some time ago, and Levelset story was so amazing. We're so glad to have you and hear it from the what would you say, the battle hardened side of things rather than the glossy CEO seat.
Yeah, Scott from his ivory tower, he tells such a wonderful, beautiful story. Now I get to unravel all of his lies. No, I'm just kidding. Scott, I listened to that interview. It was a great interview. And, he hits the nail on the head. Hopefully today we can go a little deeper into some of maybe the more tactical things that we did as we scaled Levelset. Because Scott paints a nice picture from the viewpoint that he's standing from. But he knows all the details too. It just sometimes it doesn't tell it. It's not as good of a story, right? And thank you for having me, Owen and Martin. By the way, thank you. Happy to be here. This is great.
Yeah, I'm glad.
You're welcome.
This is the first episode we're doing with the top leaders within go-to-market and construction tech. So we're super excited to be doing this. And so I guess Martin, tell us about your story. What's your journey been with sales and go-to-market and construction?
Yeah, sure. So I'll try to make this as brief as I can. Like most people who wound up in sales, I got there by accident. So I started, I guess, in college. I was always hustling and had little businesses and side hustles, and then I started working at a startup company. It was a flip-flop company. Like we sold flip-flops to Whole Foods and different retailers. It was a natural product, and that I got bit by the entrepreneurship bug. And then I founded a company that was a crowdfunding application, and we raised some money, and that didn't go anywhere. We promptly ran out of money, and then I needed a job. So I took a job selling health insurance for like 2 months. And the only customer I ever closed was Scott Wolf at Zealing, which is now, as Levelset. So I was calling on Scott. Funny enough, I forget about this. I applied when it was obvious that my company was going out of business. I applied to Levelset and I got rejected. And then I took this job to sell health insurance. And then I had been staying in touch with Scott and kind of pursuing him. And, he looked at my background. He's like, here's this 23-year-old kid. He's obviously got potential. He's founded a company. He's, seems to be at least persistent, if not, potentially good at sales. And so the gamble was, hey, listen, come work at Zealing, and we can come be our salesperson and help us figure out how to sell this thing. And so that's when I joined. I joined in January of 2013, and there were 6 other people sitting around the table. And we were really fortunate because that same group of people, I'm not the founder by any means, but we call that kind of like the founding group or founding team. Scott would even say that. And those people all stayed with the organization all the way through the whole run for the next, whatever it was, 10 years, 10 years. I don't know. Time's a flat circle now. It all blends together. So that's my journey. I joined at Levelset. We didn't have much revenue. We had $15,000, $20,000 a month in transactional revenue. The business was helping contractors file liens online. And then I joked that we couldn't even spell ARR at the time. Like we didn't know anything about SaaS or any of this. And I was just had an incredible appetite to learn more about how to sell and how to build a company. And we just, I guess, put one foot in front of the other. And 8 years later, built a real thing, a real business that had some real velocity, not without some blood, sweat, and tears along the way, right? So I don't know. How's that for an answer for my journey?
Oh yeah, you're revealing how small New Orleans is now.
Yeah, it's quite small.
Okay, so Mom, I see you also right now you're like what you do to keep you busy is you do consulting, right? And you're also starting something. I checked out your LinkedIn profile and maybe hinted towards something else.
I left Procore, I guess it was about almost to the day, actually, almost 2 years ago to the day. March 1st will be at my 2nd year anniversary of leaving.
Oh, wow.
And it was all good, left on good terms, and Levelset team's doing great over there. I just wanted to go work on something again, work on something new. And so I had invested in a bunch of early stage construction tech companies because that's the world that I know. And then just the network of whether it's investors or other founders or friends who need help. I get a lot of phone calls from people who need help with scaling their sales teams. It seems like it's a big need across the entire software industry, but specifically in construction tech. And so, we have a little agency that we built with a couple of my former colleagues that I've worked with over the years. And it's been good, but I want to go build a software company again. So that's what I've been working on. We'll keep that. It's not like in stealth mode, but that's not the point of this podcast. So we'll save that for another conversation. But yeah, I'm obviously fascinated by all the vertical AI like everybody else is. And, and I'm staying in the construction tech space.
So that's exciting.
Yeah, it's all good.
Good to have you. Hey, listeners, I want to take a quick break to remind you about the Bricks and Bytes newsletter. If you're interested in learning about the technology shaping the future of construction, you won't want to miss the valuable insights we share each week. To get this exclusive content delivered straight to your inbox, head over to www.bricks-bytes.com and sign up today. Link is in the show notes. Back to the show.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we talk about Levelset? Okay, let's just go through what we're going to talk about. I mean, we'll dive into Levelset and what the sales strategy was to get that to the successful exit that you guys experienced.
So Martin, you've been 10 years within Levelset within like revenue.
Martin, you are majorly
right?
lagging.
So, how, like looking back now, how has this journey changed from early days till a few years ago when you left?
We may have to cut this bit, by the way.
Possibly. Do you want to give it time to catch up?
Yeah.
Guys, I think I can't hear you.
Yeah, Martin, you are like a good 30 seconds behind us.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. How about now?
Can you hear us?
Yeah. All right. My technology is not working well.
So we actually just got to the point of can you walk us through? We'll talk about Levelset. So I will continue. Let me just make a note here. Okay, Martin. So thanks for that. So today we're going to run through Levelset's journey and how it succeeded with his getting to exit and what the sales strategy behind that was. And then we're going to dive into like some general topics around go-to-market within construction technology. So
sure.
Tell us about Levelset, and maybe we can go straight into like what was the initial go-to-market? Like you mentioned when you were there, it was 15 to 20K ARR monthly recurring revenue.
No. So the original business model, and I think Scott talked about this on his podcast. He was prolific at writing content, and it was kind of part of our DNA as a company. And so Scott, I had the fortune of walking into a situation where Scott had already generated demand. He'd written, hundreds of articles and built a ton of resources around how to file liens and what is a lien waiver and how to send a preliminary notice. And so he had really built like a nice garden to grow plants in. And when I walked in, there wasn't a lot of like infrastructure or, knowing what I know now and thinking back to it, leads would come in. We had, I think Nutshell CRM was our CRM. He had done a lot of the like very 101 basic setup for how to convert people to sell more liens online. But we didn't even have the concept of recurring revenue in the business at all. And so the first order of business was, hey, look, we have all of these people coming to our website. We need to get better at converting the traffic into leads. And so, we were using a combination of unbounced landing pages and Google spreadsheets and the Nutshell CRM. And it was kind of, toothpicks and duct tape and bubble gum scrapped together. But it worked, for the first 6 or 7 months. It was work the leads that are there. And then I think this is the part that maybe he missed out on, is the first like million or two in ARR was actually enterprise. One of the first conversations we had, I was looking on my bookshelf to see if I had the book there. This was my training. My training was, I sat down the first day. Scott spent a half a day with me, and he's like, here's what a lean is. I'm 23 years old. I'd never done inside sales, phone sales before. I get a headset. I look like a dork, but welcome to the world. And he gives me this book. It was The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes, Chet Holmes, I think, is deceased now, but the book it was written in the 80s. It's still relevant. A lot of the tactics there are still relevant. And Chet Holmes had sold for one of Charlie Munger's companies. And so that's like his look, it's red. It might be on your bookshelf in the background, Martin, if you look. Maybe you have the book. Maybe you don't.
I missed when I was trying.
The Ultimate Sales Machine is the name of it. But anyway, so that was my training. And in that book, there's this concept of the Dream 100. Basically, go pick 100 companies, the biggest companies you could ever sell to, and go persistently go after them and put some touch, phone call, email, LinkedIn message, handwritten card, whatever. Touch them once a week forever until they tell you to go pound sand or until they give you an opportunity to buy. And we did that. And within 14 months, we had closed like 6 or 7 real enterprise deals, 100,000 plus deals. At the time, though, we weren't structuring annual upfront payments or annual contracts. We didn't know how to price this stuff or really how to sell it. We were just kind of fumbling, tripping on our own feet, and we tripped ourselves into a bunch of revenue. So those first million or two in ARR, it was a combination of going outbound cold to enterprise with the benefit that most people had heard of Z-Lean because they'd Googled anything about lean rights and they found our website before. So I had a lot of wind in my sales from all of the 3 or 4 years of work that Scott had done writing a bunch of content about how to file construction liens and construction payments. And so I don't know if that addresses the question, but that was the first version of the go-to-market. Was a lot of there was not a lot of structure like any other company. We didn't know who our ICP was. We went to the biggest companies in the world, Ferguson and ThyssenKrupp Elevator and H&E Equipment Rental and all these billion-dollar companies, and then we ended up. It's like the dog that's chasing the school bus and then finally catches the school bus. Like we finally got some of these customers, and then it's like, what do we do? Like now we have to go figure out how to onboard 80 end users, and there's 7 people in the company. Like we had no business getting that business, but it ended up forcing us to grow up a lot, and it became part of the story. And it also became part of the challenge in the business, was having to manage enterprise level relationships and also having to manage all these small business size relationships.
Martin, sorry. No, you go ahead.
Well, and so that was like, if that was iteration 1, was just getting to $1 million in revenue, or million-ish. It took us 18 months or so to get to $1.5 million. And then we really felt like we had a thing. Like we knew what we were selling. We had a pricing and packaging that worked. So then we started hiring account executives, and that was like maybe chapter 2 of the go-to-market, was really turning it into a sales team that ran a process. And that was, that consumed the next 5 or 6 years of the business.
Is it still the right way for a startup to start selling in this way, by calling 100 the largest players that they can potentially sell to?
And with
I
think, so to add, I would say also mine, like not to have too much of a structure, but like you have a target, but there's not really much infrastructure behind that.
Yeah, so this is a great question.
My intuition is that everyone now starts selling by hiring account managers, and then they try to figure out how to sell, rather than just trying to go for it first and then figure out once there is some traction.
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't recommend going after the biggest companies you could possibly sell to. That might be a mistake. I do.
Quick break to let you know, if you're getting value from this conversation, we've compiled insights like these into our comprehensive construction tech go-to-market guide. Inside, you'll find the exact frameworks top AEC tech companies use to break past the $10 million ARR mark, detailed case studies from successful exits, and actionable playbooks for pricing, sales team structure, and enterprise expansion. Head to www.bytes.com/GTM and transform how you approach growth in construction tech. Now back to our conversation.
Recommend that the founder do the selling. And Scott, to his credit, he had done a lot of the selling. Maybe he hadn't done a lot of the enterprise style selling, but he had sold, and we sold together that first year. We spent a lot of time on planes, trains, and automobiles traveling together, and which, created a very strong bond between us. And we also learned a lot. We'd go on a road tour in, let's say we were in Southern California, because we had a lot of customers that were in Southern California, and we'd meet with 10 or 12 customers in a 3 or 4 day stretch. And, we would be selling, I joke about this, but we would be selling vaporware. Not that we were trying to hoodwink anybody, but we'd sit there and the customer would say, oh, well, can the product do this? And we're like, okay, yeah, it can do that. And then we'd rush back to Hisham, our CTO, and say, hey, we need to go build this, and it needs to be live in 2 weeks because we promised the customer. And Hisham's like, stop selling things that don't, And so there's a lot of that. And I'm telling a story, obviously, but the facts are, that's what the first $1 million is like, because you don't know. You make a guess at what the product is and can do and what customers need. And then you go visit the customers, and it turns out they need something totally different, or it's just slightly different. It needs to be modified. So there was a lot of that happening in that first $1 million or $2 million. And then you kind of like, you find a repeatable purchasing pattern and a repeatable selling pattern. And then it's like, okay, we think we can scale this. I lost the original question because we got on this tangent. I want to go back to it though. Do I recommend that people go after the Dream 100? I don't recommend you go after the biggest companies you can sell to, but I do recommend that founders do the selling. And I also recommend that you just need to pick 100 companies that you want to be customers, and you need to go sell to them. Like, don't get, here's the wrong thing to do. The wrong thing to do is to try to like strategize and data and like cold email this and what, like, y'all, sales is really simple. At least the first version of sales, put 100 companies in a list, pick 3 contacts at each company that are your people that would be buyers, right? Like, start with the executive and go down to the VP level that might be the buyers. Get their contact information on Apollo or Zoom Info or wherever you have to get it, and then call them. Like, pick up the phone and call them.
Love it.
And you can get clever. We did things like we would send physical bubble mailers. Like, we would put, like letter openers like this in a bubble mailer with a handwritten card.
Yeah.
And I still keep
Chunky
in my
mail,
desk.
what do they call it?
Chunky mail. I've got handwritten cards here with my name on it. I still do this today. And you send people mail. You know what they do with mail? They open it. They may not call you back, but they will with the next, if you are persistent and you have a valuable thing that you can sell to people and you are earnestly trying to get their attention, not trying to spam them, you're going to get meetings. You're going to get a lot of no's, but you're going to get meetings. And I think people, they overestimate how difficult it is. Now, I'm also talking my own book, and I know I'm probably like naturally inclined to do sales more than what it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for everybody. Cold calling sucks. It's not fun, but you can do it. Anybody can do it. And so that's my advice, Martin, is build a list. If you're trying to get to $1 million in ARR, if your product is like $10,000 or $20,000 in average deal size, if you're trying to get to $1 million in ARR and your product's $10 a month, it's a different strategy. That's not the thing. But for construction tech, most of these products are between $10,000 and $15,000 or $10,000 and $20,000 a year. You need like 100 or 200 customers, or what is that? Yeah, you need like 100 customers. Start by just putting 100 people on a list and call them. And if you do that every week for 52 weeks, I guarantee you're going to get a bunch of meetings, and then it's up to you to go close them. You got to have the product that's good enough. That's my recommendation.
And that's so simple. Shall we end?
Yeah, that's it. Honestly, if you just did that, if every salesperson in any industry ever just did that and stopped trying to be like cute with all of their growth hacks, they would be successful. Assuming the value's there and the product's there, right? Yeah. But
which is
that's a gross oversimplification. And trying to do it at scale is hard because all the reasons. But I guess we're going to talk about that.
Martin, you mentioned earlier a little bit about learnings from these early sales. How do you figure out what can you learn? What should you implement into your product, or what should you ignore when you get this feedback from early customers?
Just say yes to everything, and then make it the CTO's problem.
No, that's that likely thing for a sales guy to say, right? Here's what I'd say, because look, customers come up with all kinds of crazy things, and customers will promise, yeah, if you have this feature, if you have that feature, we would buy. The way we worked around that was we didn't build anything unless there was already a financial commitment, not an LOI. Like, you're going to pay, and we'll promise a go live date, but like, you're going to pay for a defined scope. And that's one way. There was a question in the document you sent over, Owen, that was around like, in construction tech, in construction businesses, each business is a fingerprint, and there's so much customization, especially as you start to move into larger GCs or larger specialty contractors. And so, this is, if you're trying to build a recurring revenue business, you can't do custom development. And so part of the filter is, number one, is this valuable enough for somebody to pay for? And are they willing to actually put their money where their mouth is and pay for it? The second filter is are there other people that need this? Is there a market for this feature set? That's what I would say to that. I mean, it took us a long time to get good at taking customer feedback and product feedback and turning that into like regular releases on a schedule. This was something, when I look back at something we could have done better, or something that I'd like to learn how to do better, is exactly that. Like product, customer development, product feedback, product development, launch turns into revenue. Like, that cycle was very, very clunky for us. We always figured it out eventually. But I remember, for example, when we launched our lien waivers and pay apps module, and the primary target for that is general contractors and developers. And it launched like 3 or 4 times, because every time we had a bunch of false starts, because we go to market with it and then we'd have 1,000 conversations and learn, we actually have it wrong. We need to adjust it in a different way. And then eventually we got it to make money. And so maybe we just launched things too early. I'm not sure what the lesson is there, but that was a thing that it took us a while to figure out how to really have a product release schedule where we could bring things to market and turn it into revenue. That was not a natural thing for us.
Okay, so I'll move on to some more of the structured questions, and perhaps, Martin, if like lessons from Levelset come up, or your current experience, we can relay it back. So, starting this, how does construction tech differ from typical B2B SaaS, do you think?
Well, I guess the answer to that question depends on your definition of B2B SaaS. I remember when we really started to get traction. I joined in 2013. Around 2015, we had a couple $1 million in revenue. Our economics were good. We went to go fundraise, and when you have those economics, you kind of get a meeting with any of the venture capitalists. Like, they all want to at least take a look. And I remember being self-conscious about our business, because you would benchmark against, in that vintage of early stage companies, it's like Algolia and Twilio. And I mean, I'm thinking of like, who were the hot companies back in 2014, 2015, 2016? HubSpot had already gotten really big. And so the next generation of companies were coming around, and you would try to benchmark with like, what's their CAC to LTV ratio, or what's their months to recover? And, we're trying to figure out, are we good? Are we not good? And then it dawned on me, like, all these companies, they're selling to other venture-backed companies. Like, Sales Loft and Outreach and Gong and all of these that generation of B2B SaaS, it was horizontal. You could sell to any vertical, and primarily their customers were like, they weren't Main Street. They were selling to the coasts. They were selling to venture-backed companies. That's the difference. In construction, you're selling to Jerry, who lives in like Granite City, Illinois, right? And he's a master electrician, and his dad started the business, and he's been working in it for 35 years. And His son doesn't want to take over the business, and he's just trying to like put food on the table and have a legacy for his family. I feel like construction is America, not trying to be patriotic here, but like in the US, we sold exclusively to the US market. Construction, it's one of the biggest, everybody talks about the size of the construction industry globally, and especially in America, it's like 1/5 of GDP for the US, or don't quote me on that. But my point is, it's a huge industry. It's a very like, it's the breadbasket of America. These are regular blue collar people. And that is a different sale than trying to sell to some venture backed company or even to some, financial services organization or what have you. So that's my particular point of view. The advice I give often to construction tech founders is that construction is a very local business. Everybody looks at the ENR 400 and they're dazzled by the ENR 400, which is fine. If you want to go sell to Turner or DPR, it's great. Get ready for a really long sales cycle and a really, really challenging customer relationship. Not because those are bad companies, but because big companies are hard to service. I know we sold to them. They're hard to service. But if you look at the construction industry is the long tail. Almost all of the companies have less than $50 million in revenue. Mm-hmm. And that served us well because our go-to-market was a content-led, product-led go-to-market. Now, under the surface, we were moving our feet with an inside sales team and a field sales team and enterprise sellers and field marketers and all that. But the face of the business for Levelset was trying to appeal to the long tail of the construction market. The other thing that's interesting, there's a few points here. Number one, construction is local. Mm-hmm. The contractors in New Orleans, Louisiana, where I live, they don't care about what some guy in Dallas is doing. They care about what other contractors are doing in New Orleans. Now, generally, they care about what's best in class across the country. And there's lots of contractor peer groups. But generally, they care about what's happening in their business. In their local market, their metro service area. So construction's local. Number two, construction is the long tail. Most of these companies have less than $50 million in revenue. Number three, what is construction anyway? Not trying to be like super meta here, but my definition of construction is possibly or probably different than your definition of construction, because construction is real estate developers. Construction is ENR 400 general contractors, which includes industrial construction, commercial construction, civil construction, heavy highway, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Within that, the people who actually make the work happen aren't even the GCs in most cases because they don't self-perform. So you have MEP, plumbing, electrical, all of the guys who actually do the work. And then you have suppliers. You have large suppliers, you have small suppliers, and all these supply houses that actually deliver the materials. And then you have architecture and design. All of this web is just categorized as construction. And you have big companies and you have small companies, and every one of those stakeholders has to come together to make a project happen.
So complicated.
So when you say construction, what do you mean?
Yeah.
That was, I think, the number one biggest challenge we had at Levelset, because we sold to every single stakeholder. Mm-hmm. And you guys know, if you sell to everybody, then you sell to nobody, right? When we could sell to Turner Construction or Ferguson or Jerry's Roofing or Harry's Ace Hardware, all of them could be customers. How do you make your messaging work to appeal to all of those people? Incredibly hard. It caused a lot of indigestion for us and frankly slowed down our revenue growth for a long time. It took us 18 months to get to like $1.5 million in revenue. Mm-hmm. It took another 6 years to get to 10 million. Mm. And then 10 million to 20 million, 18 months.
Wow.
Oh, wow. So
like a bell curve kind of almost.
I don't know what the shape is, but it was really painful along the way because the whole while, we're benchmarking and we would go fundraise and they're all looking at our metrics and they're comparing to high growing B2B SaaS companies that are selling to not construction. They're selling to a bunch of other venture-backed companies. I mean, that's an oversimplification. I want to be fair, and I'm not trying to throw those other companies under the bus because there are a lot of great operators that are not in construction tech. But look, that's why I guess I tend to lean more toward favoring construction tech companies because I understand it. And it's better now. The market's more educated. We would go fundraise. It was me, Scott, and Bradford, our CFO. It's like the fundraising team. And when we would fundraise, half of the conversation, at least back in 2014 and 15 and 16, half the conversation, we'd be like, here's the construction industry. Yeah. We'd spend 45 minutes of a 1 hour pitch meeting just educating on construction tech. And then the last 15 minutes talking about what Levelset is and how we work and the value we provide. Yeah. And then, Tracy and Ralph and Playing Grid, they had a good run. Dustin and the Building Connected guys, they had a good run. We had a good run. And when those exits happened, I think people wisened up. Aconex had a big exit. The market got a little smarter and started paying attention. And now you see it. They have venture firms outside of brick and mortar. They have venture firms that are exclusively dedicated to the built world, which is super exciting because, we feel like we've been shouting in a vacuum for years. And it feels like, we've kind of come around, which is very, very positive.
Yeah. Martin, hey, so I mentioned so many things here, but I will start from how do you figure out messaging when you have like lots of different companies that you're selling to, that you can sell to? How did you structure it? Maybe on the Levelset example, how did you figure out like what's the right messaging and what's the right structure to fuel these sales and to make them easier to execute?
Yeah, maybe it's a good time to probably mention like segmentation in that area too.
Yeah, so I don't know that I'm the best person to answer this question because I don't think we ever really figured it out. I joke about this. We got Levelset to about 30 million in not ARR. Total revenue was like 30 million at scale. And I still feel like we didn't have product market fit, which when I say those words out loud, it sounds ridiculous because we very obviously had, we caught a tiger by the tail. We were, at scale, we were closing, $1.5 million to $2 million in net new ARR every single month. We had thousands and thousands of 5-star reviews. We had really built a valuable thing. But I still didn't feel like we totally nailed the messaging. And that's because, if I had a sales rep, or if I was a sales rep sitting in the seat and I was working inbound leads in one sitting, in 3 conversations back to back, I could be talking to a pool contractor in Florida, a mid-sized general contractor in Dallas, Texas, and then a lumber supply company in California. Those 3 conversations are totally different. And so we just had to get really good at zeroing in on what's the problem that we solve. Our mission was to empower people to always get what they earn. And we had this core value of help first, which was born out of the sales team. And this is what we coached. Hey, listen, when you get on the phone, stop trying to angle them towards some pitch that you think you're trying to land on. Just try to help. A lot. We got really good at coaching people on how to understand lien rights and how to get paid faster on construction projects, because that was the value prop. We help you get paid faster on construction projects. And so we'd get on the phone and we would just help people solve that problem. Oh, and by the way, you're a general contractor in Dallas, Texas. Here's how we can help you solve your problems there. And so I'd say the short answer to your question, Martin, is start with the problem that you solve, not by the market that you want to serve. And if you have discipline and conviction around the problem that you solve and you know it well, then the sale becomes really easy and the messaging becomes really easy.
Mm-hmm. So why did it take you 18 months to go to 1.2 million, you said?
Yeah, I don't know the exact numbers, but we got roughly like 1.5 million or so in about 18 months. And it came in like there were some step function increases in there because we had closed some enterprise deals. Anyway, back to your question.
Yes. So why did it tell you around 18 months to get to this number, and then 6 years to 10 million, and then another 18 months to 20 million? Like what was the key components of these changes in, I don't know, mindset or whatever that was?
Yeah. So chapter 1, the chapter 1 was really Scott's chapter of the lien wizard is what we called it. You could go online, Google how to file a lien, and Broward County, Florida. You'd find this website, Z-Lean. You'd go through this shopping cart experience, and then you would pay $300 for your lean, and you'd move on with your day. That was V1. V2 was the Scott and Martin show. We went in, we built our Dream 100 list. We worked the leads that came inbound, some of which were big companies, so like Gray Bar Electric or Emser Tile. Those came in inbound because they found us online, and we just worked the leads, worked the organizations. So chapter 2 of our go-to-market was just Scott and Martin out there pounding the pavement, trying to figure out how to get recurring revenue and building our first packaging. And then that would got us to 1.5 million or so. And then we started to hire some salespeople to go work all of the leads that were coming inbound and work the outbound effort that we had started to build. And that version, I'd say, why did it take us so long to get to 10 million? A few things. Number one, we tried to fly 2 planes at the same time. When the first million or so came quickly because we got large enterprise companies to start spending money with us, and big companies, they can spend a lot of money really quickly if you solve a real problem for them. And so, we'd get in with 1 region and they'd expand to 2, and then they'd expand to 5 regions. And then all of a sudden you've got a company spending $20,000, $30,000 a month with you. That's a lot of money for a company that only has $20,000 a month in revenue. So it came in these big jumps. And that was a confusing thing for go-to-market because we were like, oh, this is easy. We can definitely build an enterprise scalable go-to-market engine and also have this SMB, inbound turnstile, like high velocity sales engine. We can totally run both of those go-to-markets at the same time. And that was a mistake. We spent a lot of time hiring for and building enterprise sales teams while also trying to build out the SMB go-to-market. And after, so let me try to run through some of the chapters. It's probably around 3.5 million or 4 million in ARR where we said, hey, listen, we need to focus, right? We need to get traction fast, and we're not getting enough traction. We were growing still pretty quickly, but the market was big and we had a good offering, and we weren't growing as quickly in either one of those segments as we wanted to. So what we said is, look at what the market's telling us. We have more and more leads. We can write more and more content. We can drive traffic up. Let's just focus on the SMB. We'll be opportunistic with enterprise. If people come in, we're not going to turn down revenue, but we're not going to go hire enterprise salespeople, spend a ton of money on going to conferences, building these road tours where we would go and set up events and dinners. And what we eventually learned was a really effective enterprise go-to-market. We just said, we're going to punt on that. And I think it was either 2016 or 2017. And we said, we're just going to put our head down to the exclusion of everything else. We're going to focus on SMB. And that was really when it started to kick. And then we raised Series B at the end of 2017. And that took us through 2018. And then, by the end of 2018, we were kind of ripping. I mean, look, every company has their periods of acceleration and then periods of less fast growth. But the answer there is really that we had a bifurcated go-to-market. We weren't focused in our efforts, and the way that we got through it was really focusing on who our core customer is, and that hardened a lot of our culture and our values as a sales, marketing, and customer success team was in that stretch. We also hired a bunch of people in that stretch too.
Could you speak to how selling to the small to mid to enterprise market differs?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, selling to SMB is it's near and dear to my heart because that's where I cut my teeth in Levelset selling to all of these small contractors. But SMB is hard. One thing is these are business owners. They're literally buying things out of their own pocket. When you say it's going to be $5,000 a year or whatever your software license is, they have to think really hard about what's the trade-off, And so there's a responsibility from a salesperson or from a founder's perspective, company perspective, to have real value tied to the offering that you're selling to these small businesses. Mid-sized businesses, that's where you get, you're selling to people who are, professional managers and who are running P&Ls. And so sales cycle gets a little bit longer. At every level, you have to have value, right? We found that the SMB was the fastest sales cycle. Mid-market, this tracks. Mid-market was a little bit longer. Enterprise was obviously very long and a lot more strategic. But what's the nature of the question? Like, what's the difference between them? They're wildly different. For us, there aren't really that many SMB building material suppliers, for example, right? And so if we wanted to go sell to suppliers, which were really important to us strategically, because number one, they could spend a lot of money, right? And we provided a lot of value to them, obviously, but also they provided a ton of data that fed the data graph, and that also provided value back to them. So it was strategically important to the product. Well, if we wanted to get more of those customers, we had to go build a mid-market and enterprise selling motion because it didn't exist in the SMB. Vice versa, if we wanted a bunch of plumbers, electricians, roofing contractors, restoration contractors, they don't really have many mid-market and enterprise companies that fall into those categories. That's the long tail of construction. And so this goes back to our early comment about what is construction. You have owners, GCs, specialty contractors, suppliers, design professionals. And then you have another cross-section of what project type: residential, commercial, industrial, civil. And then you have another cross-section of how large the organization is. It is a complex market. And so that's the difference, is that for us, at least when it came to selling construction payment software and lien rights management software, SMB naturally found its own customer profile because of the type of companies who fit into that category who needed our services. Mid-market kind of found its customer profile, and then enterprise found its customer profile. That's that was the difference, is that it was just different size businesses and different types of construction businesses.
One follow up to this would be for people within construction, and maybe this is aimed more towards people earlier in their sales journey. How do you figure this all out? Do you just have to literally pick up the phone and start calling people and learn from the brutal answers that you get?
Maybe. Maybe. I think that's one way. That's the way that I would do it, because I think that's the fastest path. I think anytime you're going to go sell a product or going to market, the market's going to tell you what they value. You go talk to prospective customers, you're going to find out really quick whether or not you have something that they're willing to spend money on. Right? But you have to be willing to ask them, do you want to buy this? I think that's a mistake that a lot of early stage founders make, is that there's a lot of indirect.
Yeah.
Indirect. Oh, how does it, do you think this would work? That doesn't work. You have to have the conversation. Here's your current set of challenges. I understand those challenges well. Here's the desired outcome. Do you agree with this desired outcome? Okay, great. Here are the commercial terms, and here's why my product is the best solution to solve those problems you just said. Do you want to buy this? No? Okay. Tell me more. What is it? Is it a feature deficit? Is it because you don't have budget? Is it because you're not the right person and you're afraid to stick your neck out and actually buy a piece of software or partner with a company like ours? I think you learn the most whenever you ask somebody to pay for something, because that is the moment of truth about whether or not that there's a fair trade of value for dollars. And I think you can spend a lot of time writing content and getting traction and distribution, which is super important. I am not trying to say that that's not important, but that does not turn into dollars. And it doesn't inform you whether or not you have a product that's valuable and if there's a market for it.
Mm-hmm. Very good. How do you figure out pricing then?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same thing. How do you qualify budget?
So there's a few things kind of. I listened to the interview you had with Chase Gilbert, and he had great advice. It's like there's three ways to to think about pricing. One is you can do like a competitive pricing. The other is cost plus, right, where you look at your own cost basis and you put some margin on top. And the third is value-based pricing. And I totally agree with Chase. The best version is value-based pricing. It took us a long time to figure that out. We probably had, no joke, like not even an exaggeration, we probably had 150 different pricing and packaging structures over the course of 10 years.
Wow.
I would force ourselves to update packaging at least once a quarter. And the sales team and the customer success team hated it because every time you change pricing, it's like, but I thought it was important. And this is, I learned a lot from, Patrick Campbell. He had a company called Profitwell. They sold it, but he had, prior to Profitwell, that was their product, but the website he had was called Price Intelligently. And he was one of the first guys online really talking about SaaS pricing and, doing the sensitivity analysis and all, he got really scientific with it. We were not that smart about it. I wish we could have been as smart as Patrick Campbell is about how we did pricing. We just, what we did at first, how do you price? Sell to people the way that they want to buy, right? For us, it was easier because there was an analog. We could go into them and let's say I was selling to an equipment rental company and they had a professional services firm that they used to manage their lien rights. And so we just said, what are you paying them? Are you willing to share that? Okay, great. We'll do that, but just $1 less, right? We'll just do it and kind of match the structure of that pricing. That is not value-based pricing. That is a competitive anchoring. But you know what it did? It got us in the door and it got us customers. Yeah, and it helped us learn more about the value. So I think early on, you can try to be strategic, but you know what is really important for your first 10 or even your first 100 customers? Just get the logo on the board and get the customer in. Don't worry about the profitability, right? I mean, it's easy to say if you're venture backed, but we weren't at that point. We were relatively bootstrapped and we were cash flow positive. We had to use profits to fund the business. And so we made sure that our margins were good enough, but we were just trying to win a deal so that we could get the customer so that we could build on that relationship. After we had gotten some traction with that, I remember early on, this is definitely like 2013. We had, it was an SMB customer and we didn't have any SaaS pricing for SMB. It was all transactional. And this customer calls me. I remember exactly who it was. The company's called Perch. I don't even know. They might even still exist. It was Fixtures Living, and then they rebranded, and they sell like high-end fixtures and like outdoor kitchens and high-end bathrooms and things like that. Okay, so they were a supplier and they were an installer, and they did a high volume. And she calls and she says, I'm tired of getting my credit card dinged every single time we use this. Can you just give me one price that I pay every single month so that I don't get 150 credit card charges every single month? It's driving me crazy. And it took me like 2 weeks to figure out what to charge her because I was trying to be way so scientific about like margins, and I don't want to get. What I should have done is just said, how about $500 a month? Does that sound good? Okay, great. And then forget about the profitability and go see if I can get 5 other people to spend $500 a month. And if you can do that, well, then I bet you can charge $750 a month. And so there was a lot of that of like just testing the limit on not trying to price gouge people or like try to eke out every marginal dollar, but like there was a lot of price elasticity in our product. And you don't find the edges of that until you actually go out and ask people, can you pay $10,000 a year for this? No? Okay, great. Well, I'm not going to negotiate against myself. How much would you pay? We're still trying to figure out our pricing. It's not going to be $1 and it's not going to be $10,000. We've established that. Well, now we're just negotiating. We got to find somewhere in the middle. Mm-hmm. I don't know that that's very helpful advice, but that's kind of how we went about it. And then later on, we got smart. We hired these consultants that would come in and do the value-based analysis and figure out pricing. But honestly, I feel like a lot of that stuff, I don't know how helpful it was because, we just listen to the customers. You'll know if you have enough pricing conversations with customers, what people are willing to pay.
Yeah, those consultants got to make money somehow. Hey?
These damn consultants, they're the worst.
something we always hear and people moan about in construction, I'm sure you hear it, is about how complex and long the sales cycles can be. So very broad, but how do you advise founders, sales teams, and so on and so forth to handle that?
Get better at sales. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
We didn't really have that.
That's
We didn't really have
probably-
that problem for the SMB. You know, we had a median sales cycle of 4 days for a $5,000 average deal size. That's SMB, right? Our enterprise deals, they definitely took longer. You know, so there were some companies that I pursued for 4, 5, 6 years before we ever really were able to get in and have a real conversation. I think when you're selling
what was the ticket price for those, like more or less?
Was that?
What was the ticket price for those, more or less?
6 figures. So, you know, our average enterprise deal was probably between 150,000 and 200 a year. You know, our largest customer was approaching $1 million a year. And there, you know, we had at scale, we probably had 7 or 8 million in total revenue from like enterprise or like upper mid market. So we had a pretty good portion of our customer base that skewed that side. But by volume of customers, it was way heavy on the long tail in the SMB. I want to go back to the question though. So your question is like, how do you navigate this really long sales cycle? I think that's true whenever you're selling into ENR 400 companies. If you want to go sell to Turner or DPR, but number one, like you have to find a champion. And this, I don't want to get on my soapbox about how to sell and sales coaching, but
come on,
you know, there's this.
That's what we want.
Yeah. I mean, look, champion hunting and understanding how to find someone who's going to not just advocate and be a fan, but someone who's really going to fight through all of the internal resistance that they're going to experience to say, no, like this is a priority. We need to solve this problem. And I believe that this company is the right solution to solve this problem. You have to go manufacture that person. The reason deals take so long usually is because you don't have either, number one, a strong enough champion, or number two, the champion doesn't have they don't have the juice. Like they don't have the actual clout or influence to make the deal happen. And so it's hard without existing relationships to go sell into large billion-dollar companies. Look, in my experience, I was 25, 26 years old. I have the benefit of having gray hair at a young age. I could fool people into thinking I had more experience than I had. But I was 25, 26 years old, flying to Chicago, you know, pitching to US Gypsum, which is this huge company. Like, I'm not buddy with any executives at US Gypsum. You got to go figure that out. You have to go make a relationship. And this is, you know, there's no shortcut to that. I think that's the bad news about enterprise sales. I think it is interesting in a product-led growth world. You know, you see a lot of, especially now with vertical AI, the new buzzword for vertical SaaS. You see a lot of companies that it's generationally, it is companies are turning over. You have a more tech forward generation that's in senior leadership roles, and they're willing to take a portion of their P&L and bet on these products to help on the front lines. But you still have an adoption challenge. I think anytime you sell into the enterprise, you really have, well, there's like 1,000 sales you have to make within the org and navigating a political environment. But really, you have to have an executive sponsor. You have to have a champion who's going to foster the implementation. But then you have to get a bunch of frontline, whether it's foremen or laborers, or in our case, credit managers. That was our end user for our enterprise customers. You have to convince them that this is going to help them make their job easier. Otherwise, it's just their boss saying, like, you got to use this product because we rolled it out. And I think that's why enterprise takes so long, is that they're slow, because once they bet on something, they're going to spend a lot of time and effort implementing it and training their team. And they're going to be with that solution for a really long time. It's sticky. That's why people love enterprise revenue. And so they're just slow to make that decision. How do you accelerate that? You have to go find a champion who has enough influence, who's going to convince a bunch of people internally. The last thing I'll say about this, and this goes with every single sale, it's easier in SMB because usually you're talking to a business owner or a principal. But in mid-market or enterprise, you know, there's a friend of mine, Nate Nasrallah. This is a really good book. It has nothing to do with construction tech, but it's this concept of selling with. He didn't invent this, but he sure as hell did a good job of just encapsulating this concept. This idea that whenever you're selling enterprise deals, and you get your champion, the job immediately changes. You're on the same side of the table with them, and you have to help them get that thing bought, right? That's not a very eloquent way to say it, but my point is your champion might be a VP of construction at a general contracting business. That VP of construction, you know what they went to school for and what they're good at? They're good at running construction companies and running construction projects and making them finish on time and under budget, and making sure that nobody gets hurt or dies on the construction project, and that they have limited risk, and that they satisfy their bonding company's requirements. They run the job. They're not good at buying software. They don't do it that often. So if you're a construction tech company trying to get a VP of construction to buy your $80,000 a year solution and get a bunch of people in their organization, understand that this is like the 15th thing on their priority list that they have to do on the side of their desk. So the best thing that you can do is help them get this thing bought. Help them get everybody bought into why your solution is the right solution for the business. So what does that actually look like? I spent a lot of time coaching and evangelizing the concept that do the work for them, write the executive summary, build the deck for them, schedule the meetings for them, offer to do as much work as you can, make the integration super simple, take the work off their plate so that you make it the path of least resistance to say yes. I think the mistake a lot of early stage companies make is that they leave it to the customer to figure out how to purchase the product. And it's not signing the document is kind of like the last thing. That's not the challenge. The challenge is getting all of those stakeholders, the owner whose money it is, or all of the VP of construction's peers at the executive level, or all of the end users, getting them bought in that this is something that we should prioritize anyway.
Maybe they don't need it. If it's so difficult to convince them, maybe they don't need a product. What I'm trying to get here is maybe the tech is not that good if you need to convince them for so long and it's so difficult.
Yeah, maybe. I guess there's a lot of software companies out there that with just silver tongue salespeople who can go sell it. Here's what I know, Martin, is that you could have the best product in the world. It is not going to sell itself. Not in a big business. It'll sell itself to mid-size or small businesses where somebody can pull out their American Express card and just put it on their company card. Those you can do if you just have a great product and great messaging and great distribution. Mm-hmm. But if you want to get an enterprise deal done, the product is not going to sell itself. Even if it's incredibly valuable, you still have to do a bunch of gymnastics and you have to be a contortionist to make the company bought in. Because here's the facts. I'm sure somebody's done research on this. Maybe I should look this up and have a ready-made stat. But it's buying the product is kind of the cheapest thing about buying the product. It's so much more expensive, the switching cost from whatever your solution was to what it is now, or the training and implementing and the time that you spend getting everybody up to speed and rolling this thing out. That is, in many cases, that's 2, 3, 4 times more expensive than whatever the exchange of dollars is with the software that you buy. Because you're talking about, I mean, I know we're talking broadly about construction tech, but think about like Procore, for example, or fill in the blank with whatever, Levelset, any other product. These are transformational products. They change the way people do their day-to-day work. That's not easy to do. And it certainly isn't going to be the product that does it. It's like reinforced by a bunch of coaching and behavior and people saying, hey, look, we're going to commit to this as part of our stack of what we rely on to do our jobs. It's really expensive. The human capital part is really expensive.
So, Martin, what is the best way to convince someone that your product has a value? Is it a presentation, pitch deck, call, case study? What is it?
Show them the way. I think you touched on it earlier.
Yeah. So I think your question is like, what's the medium? What's the appropriate medium that you should use? This is the non-answer. I hate giving you this answer because it's kind of a crappy answer, but it depends on what the customer's preference is, and that's why, in marketing speak, it's like you have to be omni-channel and you have to use all of the different mediums. I think, to your point, Owen, if you can show people, well, first of all, you have to demonstrate that you understand the problem, right? There's this concept in sales. It's actually not even in sales, it's in advertising. There's this book called Breakthrough Advertising that was written in the 60s, back in, like, do you know the show Mad Men?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever heard? Anyway, so it's like about the advertising executives back in the 50s and 60s.
Mm-hmm.
That was also when a lot of the first research was done around consumer behavior and behavioral economics. And this guy, Eugene Schwartz, who was this copywriter and advertising executive, built this framework. It's called the awareness spectrum. And you've seen this before. People purchasing any product, construction technology, or sneakers or a mattress. People go through a journey from being unaware that they have a problem to being aware that they have a problem, to then finding all of the available solutions to solve that problem, to then finding the product that is the type of solution to solve the problem, and then they buy the product. Okay, so our job as marketers and sales and go-to-market folks is to take people from being unaware that they have a problem all the way through that spectrum. And I think the mistake that a lot of companies make, you see this all the time. It's like, sell me this pen, right? Or give me your pitch, the elevator pitch. And the pitch is all about me, 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 me. Here's our product. Here's what we do. Here's the features. Here's all this stuff. And that's absolutely the wrong approach, because if you're trying to sell something, you have to start from the position that the person doesn't even understand that they have a problem to begin with. How do you get them to be aware that they have a problem? So going back to your question, if you can demonstrate that you understand the problem really well and you can educate, I said earlier, our core value as a company, help first.
Mm.
Don't even talk about your problem. Just talk about help. Hey, you seem to be you're a general contractor in Texas. We work with tons of other general contractors in Texas, and they have this problem. You probably have that problem too. Tell me more about what you're doing to solve that problem. Okay, great. Let me tell you some things that we've learned about how companies are solving that problem. Oh, by the way, one of those ways to solve that problem, we built a product that does it really, really well. Can I show you it? Okay, great. And now we're in a real selling conversation. What medium
Nice.
I use to make that conversation happen? You can do it through content. You can do it with video. You can do it with written content, video content. You can do it with a bubble mailer and a handwritten card. You can go to a conference and set up a booth. You can. There's an infinite number of ways. It all depends. If you're selling hardware, so a friend of mine has a company that does access control on construction projects. So they have like the facial recognition, and it's really important to understand which subcontract or which laborers for which of your subs, and for time tracking and for safety and for all kinds of other things. It's kind of hard to demo that product on a Zoom call. Okay, well, what's part of their go-to-market? They got to go get on the job site with the contractor with a backpack and set up the little kiosk with the facial recognition thing, and they got to see it and feel it and touch it. Right? That's a very different sale than selling PlanGrid. PlanGrid, you didn't need a physical thing, but you needed an iPad in your hand and show people, hey, look, this is what a digital blueprint looks like. Construction documents in your pocket. Wow, what an amazing concept. And then Levelset, for us, almost everything was done virtually. It was easy for us to demonstrate the product through Zoom.
Very nice. Martin, what are some of the maybe archetypes or key traits is probably easier of a great salesperson?
So I knew you were going to ask this. I've written about this on my website, martinroth.com, plug. We'll put the banner of it. Yeah. And I write about these kinds of things. But the reason I write is because I need to codify some of my learnings and my memory. So we built Levelset sales team in New Orleans. There is no tech scene in New Orleans. Or if it is, it's we knew all the companies anyway. So what are we going to go poach from our friends, and steal their salespeople, which we did, by the way. And they put, they poached from us, and it just how it is in any ecosystem.
Salary
but
inflation.
We had to get really good at manufacturing software salespeople who didn't understand construction, who didn't understand lien rights for sure, and probably didn't understand software sales. And it was really challenging, but we built this academy and got really good at taking Uber drivers and bartenders and people who sold timeshares or worked for the Hilton, selling catering packages, who had basic sales skills and turning them into, or maybe they were just good at hospitality or had the right characteristics, and we turned them into software salespeople. So we did have to build a bit of a rubric. What are we looking for? And so let me see if I can remember the 5 things we hired for. Number 1 was grit. And grit, you could call that perseverance. Like, I need to see that you can overcome adversity, because let's be clear, you're going to have to pick up the phone 40 to 70 times every single day with a bunch of people, with a bunch of strangers who don't want to talk to you. That's the job. And so if you don't have grit, if you don't know how to get kicked in the teeth and then get back up, then sales ain't for you.
Quick one before you go on to the second one. What's the first thing you should say on a call?
What's the first thing you should say on a call?
Yeah.
Like on a sales call?
A cold call.
Hello? I don't know. I mean, like, what's the lead in? I mean, I have like it's like, I don't know. I don't know the quick answer to that question.
Fair enough.
Yeah. You should probably just say hi and introduce yourself. That'd be the first thing.
Okay.
Or the reason I'm calling or where you're coming from. So grit, super important. Resourcefulness or agency, right? It was one of our. Do you have the figure it out gene? Like, do you know how to just solve problems? Are you resourceful? Can you go? Or are you the person who every time you hit a roadblock, you turn around and say, I'm stuck. I need help. We didn't have the time for that. Like, we're here to help, but I need to see you being resourceful and have some figure outism in you, right? So grit, resourcefulness or agency, enthusiasm. This one's super important. A little enthusiasm goes a long way. You don't know each other, right? But for the hour or so that we spent on the phone, I got enthusiasm for days, right? Yeah. Lights go on, curtains go up. It's showtime, baby.
Oh, yeah.
You have to have a little bit of showmanship if you're going to do phone sales. Because in person, a lot of your personality comes through, but you got to manufacture a relationship over the screen. Mm-hmm. Well, I need to see you come alive, especially if most of your conversation is on the phone and they don't get to see your face. Yeah. And so the other thing about enthusiasm is you got to act like you want the business. Act like you want to be there. They want to get excited. Give them a reason to get excited, right? Okay, so grit, resourcefulness, enthusiasm, curiosity. Do you read, right? Like, tell me about 5 books that you've read recently. Or if you don't read books because you have a short attention span, which, by the way, you're, in sales, you might have ADD or what. I mean, I'm not trying to be, politically incorrect here, but it's like sales guys, generally, you don't have a lot of scholars in the sales profession, but you have a lot of curious salespeople and they find information in other different ways. So like, give me a 17-minute TED talk on anything. I don't care if are you into ornithology and you like birds? Great. Tell me about it. Or are you into whatever hobby? Just show me that you're curious. Because if you're not curious, then I guarantee you're not going to go and really learn the problems that we solve. All right. So let's go back to grit, resourcefulness, enthusiasm, curiosity. It's going to come to me. It's going to come to me. Hold on. I'm going to cheat.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm going to cheat.
The last one. Something to help people, maybe, one of the values.
Ambition. That's it.
Ambition.
No, ambition. This is like the most important one too. Why is ambition important? So we at Levelset, and what I've helped a bunch of other companies do is build what I call a success culture. I actually learned this from an executive coach that I worked with. His name's Barrett Foster, and he's like an OG. He just built $100 million plus sales teams, like just awesome. And what I learned from him is, hey, listen, we have a choice. If we're going to build a team, we can choose to be a team that cares about success or a team that doesn't care about success. And from the outside looking in, it's like, who doesn't care about success? Believe it or not, a whole bunch of people do not care about success, even people who think that they want to be in sales. And we just made a commitment early on. I want to be around people who are ambitious, who want to be successful, who are using this opportunity with Levelset as a platform to do something better with their life.
Mm-hmm.
And so the takeaway here is I can't want you to be more successful than you want you to be successful. Because if I want you to be more successful than you care to be successful, then all of the things I'm coaching you to do, picking up the phone and learning how to navigate cold calls and how to negotiate and sell and all these things, it ain't worth it. Like the job is too hard unless you really have high expectations for your life and for your career. And so those are the 5 things. Let's go back through grit, resourcefulness, curiosity, enthusiasm, and ambition. If you have those 5 things, well, you probably should just go be an entrepreneur. But while you're on your way to being an entrepreneur, come and do some sales, and we'll teach you that.
Sales is a great place to start.
That was kind of the archetype for our first handful of sales reps. Jake started a company. That company, I started a company. It failed. And then I came to work at Levelset. Jake started a company. It failed. He came to work at Levelset. Tom started a company. It failed. He came to work at Levelset. Over and over again, we hired these people who had shown high agency, high resourcefulness, high curiosity, high ambition, wanted something more out of their lives, brought them in. And that was like the basis of our DNA as a sales culture.
I've actually had a similar thing.
The last one quick from me is, at what point founding teams should start looking at director of revenue or sales director, someone who can fit this role?
It's a great question. I've written about this too on the website. You should go read it, Martin. I think founders quickly rush to go hire for a sales leader because, well, a few reasons. Number one,
they don't want to sell.
They don't want to sell. They're not good at selling, and so they want somebody to come solve that problem. And that never works. Like never ever works. I think my path at Levelset is atypical. Like I do as I say, not as I do. Like how I came into Levelset and the relationship Scott and I had, and how the business evolved or grew as we all were working together. It's not a common path. Scott probably should have waited a while. And also I wasn't a director of sales. Like I carried a bag for the first 3 years, even while we were scaling the team. My compensation was largely how many deals did I personally close, and I got commission on it. It wasn't until way later that we actually, okay, Martin, you're going to be, actually a sales leader and not also a player coach. I wouldn't recommend a company do that. What I'd recommend is that the founder run the team, and the founder hire account executive. Well, first hire somebody to set meetings for you so you don't have to do your own prospecting, and then get those people to elevate into account executives or what title you want to give them, and let them close deals. And then once you have 2 or 3 reps that are consistently hitting quota and you have the messaging down, you should probably go hire somebody to manage that team.
Mm-hmm.
Better yet, if one of those people has the chops to actually be the manager. I think it's really hard to hire externally for leadership, but it happens all the time, right? Like you definitely can go hire a good sales leader. I don't know that there's a magic ARR number or anything. If that's what you were searching for, it's probably somewhere between 1 and 3 million, just depending on how much traction you have. It's almost never a good idea to hire a director of sales before $1 million in ARR. You just don't know enough. And you certainly don't have enough game tape to understand how you would even train a director of sales or a head of sales or a sales manager to run your team. What you're doing if you hire a director of sales too early is you're just outsourcing the building of your go-to-market, and that's just a bad move.
Very, very good, very well said. And do you hire from inside the industry or outside of the industry?
I don't think it matters. We hired from inside the industry and outside the industry. We hired from all of the previous generation of construction tech companies, from Procore and Autodesk and et cetera, from PlanGrid and all of the companies that came before us or even were within the same vintage as us. I don't think it matters. I think if you focus on the 5 characteristics that I mentioned, or for leadership, hiring for leadership has different characteristics you would hire for. I think you have to hire for the values and the character of the person. You can teach market and you can teach product. It does help if they come in with an understanding. We certainly hired people from within construction tech or from within the construction industry, and it was helpful, but I don't think it's a requirement.
They can sell, they will.
And if they can lead, they will. And pretty quickly, by the way, to everybody that listens to this, if you have a salesperson or a sales leader that's been in your organization for longer than 90 days and you're not seeing the thing that you hired them for, then you probably should get rid of them, because it doesn't change. Once they get to 90 days, that is a known quantity. It ain't going to change.
Well, sadly, we're out of time, but Martin, how did
we go through? That was amazing. You guys it's like time flies when we're having fun.
It did fly.
It's never enough, honestly, but it's like
we didn't even get to like any of the questions. We got a whole page of questions that we got to get to.
All right, let's go. We'll be here 10 hours.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, it means we have to schedule part 2.
Anytime you want.
New
I love
Orleans,
talking about this stuff. Yeah, let's do it. We'll have some beignets, coffee and beignets, and we'll talk about construction tech. Hey, look, it is exciting. It is exciting right now. Construction tech is a real category. You're seeing really interesting and fun companies come about. The go-to-market landscape is changing. That's something I think about a lot. I feel like I'm fighting the previous war, and the war is different. The game has changed. And so a lot of what's true in enterprise sales will be true for a long time. I believe that. But distribution and the mechanisms for distribution are definitely evolving. And so that's something I'm learning a lot right now, in just different ways to get into conversations, different mediums you can use. I think putting things in a bubble mailer and sending them, I think that's going to be relevant 100 years from now. Well, as long as the U.S. Postal Service is still around, right? Which I don't know how long that's going to be around. But nevertheless, there are some things that'll work forever. But the landscape is definitely changing. And that's the most exciting thing, is like construction. People are going to be building buildings for a long time. And there's, they're only going to be adopting more and more technology. What an exciting time to be in this space.
Totally agree. You're making me excited. Hey, Martin, could you just tell us quickly? I think you mentioned you were working. Were you working on a guide or book or something like that for
the ultimate guide to go to market in construction? I need to actually write it and publish it. So this is a good kick in the pants to get it done.
Go for it.
And when we get it together, I'll put it on the martinroth.com website, and I'm sure it'll be on LinkedIn and Twitter and all the other places that you can find me.
Sweet. Martin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, guys.